as a science communicator with 90,000 followers. Starting today, I will spend an entire month telling you the complete 4.6 billion year history of Earth, from the very beginning to the end. From a hellish planet covered in magma, to the birth of life, the reign of dinosaurs, and the rise of humans. This will be the most complete, most shocking, and most hardcore general history of Earth you have ever come across. And the first episode of this series starts with how exactly Earth was born, and the most terrifying Hadean eon. But do you know where the moon came from? It wasn't birthed by Earth itself. It is the debris left behind by a cosmic-scale car crash 4.6 billion years ago. What's even more terrifying to think about is that if the angle of that impact had been off by even a single degree, there would be no moon orbiting Earth today. Earth's axis would spin wildly like an out-of-control top. Seasons would vanish, the climate would collapse, and neither you nor I would exist. But before we talk about this impact, I want to ask you an even bigger question. Where on Earth did Earth actually come from? About 5 billion years ago, in some corner of the Milky Way, there was a massive gas cloud floating quietly in the universe. Its composition was very simple: hydrogen, helium, and some heavier elements: carbon, iron, silicon, and oxygen. These heavy elements were left behind by stars that had died even earlier. When a star nears its end, a supernova explosion occurs, blasting the heavy elements produced by internal nuclear fusion all out into cosmic space. Then, this stardust drifted and drifted, eventually gathering into a new gas cloud. In other words, the iron in your body, the calcium in your bones, and the oxygen you breathe all come from stars that died billions of years ago. Every single one of us is a child of dead stars. About 4.6 billion years ago, affected by the shockwave of a nearby supernova explosion, this gas cloud began to collapse inward under its own gravity. The process of collapsing made it spin faster and faster, causing a massive amount of matter to gather at the center. The temperature skyrocketed, igniting nuclear fusion, and the sun was born. As for the remaining matter that didn't fall into the sun, it did not dissipate. Instead, it formed a massive rotating disk, slowly revolving around the newborn sun. This disk was the cradle of Earth. Inside this rotating disk, there were initially only tiny dust particles, the size of a grain of rice or even smaller. But electrostatic attraction existed between these dust particles. When they bumped into each other, they would stick together. Sticking and growing larger, they turned from rice grains into rocks, from rocks into hill-sized celestial bodies, and from hills into protoplanets hundreds of kilometers in diameter. Scientists call this process accretion. It was through this process of repeated collisions and repeated merging that about 20 protoplanets coexisted in the inner solar system at the same time, chasing and colliding with one another. Whichever absorbed more matter grew larger, while those with unlucky orbits were knocked away, vanishing into space forever. Earth grew up bit by bit, amidst this law of the jungle free for all. But this growth process was not gentle at all. Every impact from a large celestial body released an immense amount of heat, enough to melt the entire planet's surface into an ocean of magma. During the first tens of millions of years of its life, Earth remained in this constant cycle of being smashed to pieces and repeatedly rebuilt. This was a growth process with life and death on the line. But have you ever wondered why Earth didn't grow any larger? In the outer solar system, we find behemoths like Jupiter, with a mass over 300 times that of Earth. In other star systems, scientists have also discovered a large number of rocky planets called super-Earths, with masses several or even dozens of times that of Earth. Why is our Earth so small? The answer most likely has to do with Jupiter. According to a theory called the Grand Tack Model, after Jupiter formed, It once migrated extensively into the inner solar system. Like an elephant bursting into a porcelain shop, it scattered and cleared out a massive amount of matter in the inner ring, drastically reducing the building materials left for the inner planets. It was precisely this disruption by Jupiter that prevented Earth from growing into a super-Earth. On the surface, Jupiter seemed to be Earth's adversary. But looking at the outcome, it was precisely because of this that Earth managed to retain a size and gravity perfectly suited for life. Too large, and everything would be crushed. Too small, and it wouldn't be able to hold on to an atmosphere. Jupiter inadvertently did Earth a huge favor. About 4.5 billion years ago, Earth had already grown to nearly 90% of its current size, but it still had one final test to pass. A celestial body named Theia, roughly the size of Mars, and with about 1/10 of Earth's mass, came hurtling in from deep space. If there had been any life on Earth back then, the last thing it would have seen before dying was an entire planet filling the sky, rushing right toward it. The energy released by this impact was equivalent to 10 quadrillion Hiroshima atomic bombs exploding simultaneously. Earth was torn open, and a massive amount of scalding rock debris was hurled into space. Slowly coalescing in orbit, the Moon was born within just a few tens of thousands of years. How do scientists prove this? With the lunar rocks brought back by the Apollo missions. Analysis shows that the oxygen isotope ratios in lunar and Earth rocks are almost identical. This is extremely rare in the solar system, leaving pretty much only one explanation. The Moon was formed by the recoalescence of Earth's debris after it was smashed apart. What's even more incredible is that this impact also gave Earth three gifts. First, it tilted Earth's axis by 23.5 degrees, giving us our seasons from then on. Second, the tides created by the Moon's gravity provided a cyclical rhythm of energy for early organic molecules to gather and react. Third, the Moon kept the tilt of Earth's axis stable, preventing the climate from spiraling violently out of control over tens of millions of years. Without this impact, there would be no Moon. Without the Moon, there would be no life. Nature is best at turning disasters into miracles. Following the impact, Earth entered the darkest chapter of its history, the Hadean Eon. The name comes from Greek, meaning the unseen, dark depths. Geologists use this term to describe the first 570 million years of Earth, from 4.57 billion years ago to 4 billion years ago. During this period, Earth was quite literally a hellscape. The atmosphere was choked with toxic gases. Carbon dioxide levels were tens of thousands of times higher than today, along with massive amounts of methane, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide. They blended into toxic, reddish-orange clouds, shrouding the entire planet in an eerie, dim light. If you stood there and took a deep breath, you wouldn't get oxygen, only poison. Earth rotated incredibly fast. A day lasted a mere 6 hours. The sun rose and set every 3 hours, meaning day and night alternated 4 times faster than now. There was no solid ground on the surface. What you stepped on wasn't soil, but a molten ocean of magma hundreds of kilometers deep. Iron flowed like water here, and rocks melted like butter. Moreover, the Hadean Earth was like a cosmic shooting range. The early solar system was still in a chaotic, disorderly state, with a vast number of asteroids and comets hurtling through space, slamming into the young Earth day and night. Scientists estimate that during that era, on average every century, an asteroid large enough to obliterate an entire continent would strike. The energy of each impact was equivalent to millions of nuclear bombs exploding at once. The entire planet trembled under this relentless bombardment. Yet, right inside this living hell, something miraculous quietly took place. About 4.4 billion years ago, A barrage of comets composed of water ice began striking Earth frequently, delivering billions of tons of water molecules. This water vaporized instantly under the extreme heat, rushing into the upper atmosphere, cooling and condensing, falling as rain, evaporating again, condensing again, and falling once more. And so, a downpour that lasted for millions, or even 10 million years, began. Pause for a moment and take that number in. 10 million years of rain. The entirety of recorded human history spans only a few thousand years. That rain lasted for well over 1,000 times the length of human civilization. This was no ordinary rain. It was a highly acidic, corrosive rain. The rainwater reacted with toxic gases in the atmosphere, and every drop that hit the ground boiled and flashed steam instantly, hissing before returning to the sky once more. This terrifying, endless cycle went on for millions of years. But bit by bit, Earth was cooling down. About 4 billion years ago, the surface temperature finally dropped below the critical threshold. The rainwater began to pool in low-lying areas, slowly accumulating and slowly expanding. And just like that, the primordial oceans were born. Back then, ocean temperatures reached as high as 70 to 80 degrees Celsius. The waters were murky and filled with minerals. But right there, deep within this scalding primordial ocean, next to those deep-sea hydrothermal vents known as black smokers, intense gradients of heat and chemicals were quietly nurturing something. That was the very first awakening of life. 4.6 billion years ago, this planet started from nothing but interstellar dust. It has been smashed, scorched, and bombarded. It has been covered in toxic gases and soaked in acid rain. Yet, every single time, it survived. And then, at one specific moment, it gave birth to you. You are a survivor of 4.6 billion years. You are the answer the universe gambled all its chips on, after countless destructions and rebirths. So when you feel like life is too hard, remember that every single atom in your body has been through things far more brutal than this, and it made it through them all. Earth did, and so will you. In the next episode, we will talk about the Archean Eon. Where did the first life come from? How did it appear? Can you guess where it showed up? There is an island on Earth, where you will die if you go there. It is not because the environment is uninhabitable for humans, but because people from 60,000 years ago lived there. This island is called North Sentinel Island. It is hidden deep in the Bay of Bengal, with an area of about 60 square kilometers. The island has no airports, no docks, and no signal. There is only an unimaginably dense rainforest, and living inside it is a group of people from 60,000 years ago. That is not a metaphor. It really has been 60,000 years. The ancestors of the Sentinelese settled here before the end of the last ice age. Back then, humans did not know how to write, how to smelt iron, or what a nation was, let alone religion. While everyone else was evolving and making strides, they kept to this 60 square kilometer piece of land, living completely unchanged up to this day. But do not think they are defenseless or easy targets. In 1867, an Indian merchant ship ran aground near the reefs. The 106 crew members scrambled onto the beach. The first 2 days were calm and peaceful, and everyone considered themselves lucky. On the morning of the third day, a rain of arrows shot out from the jungle. The captain wrote in his subsequent report that their arrowheads appeared to be made of iron. This statement left everyone dumbfounded. How could an isolated tribe get iron? The answer would not surface until over a century later. In 1981, a 30,000-ton Hong Kong cargo ship ran aground during a storm on the reefs right off North Sentinel Island. The crew members were stuck on the reef, unable to move. Figures began to gather on the shore. They held bows and arrows and started cutting wood by the sea to build canoes. The urgent distress telegrams sent by the crew read exactly like this. Estimated over 50 savages, carrying various homemade weapons, are constructing 2 to 3 wooden boats. We worry they will attempt to board after sunset. This telegram still exists today. 50 Stone Age hunters, preparing to board a 30,000-ton modern cargo ship. Honestly, if you were a crew member back then, this would probably be the most surreal experience of your life. Fortunately, a storm rolled in, preventing the canoes from putting to sea. An Indian Navy helicopter arrived and evacuated everyone, but the cargo ship was left behind. Over the next few years, the islanders began doing something jaw-dropping. They dove into the ocean, hammering off iron plates and bolts piece by piece, and took them back to the island to polish entirely by hand. They grafted a piece of memory from the Iron Age straight onto the pinnacle of the cold weapon world. Their iron weapons likely came from that previously stranded cargo ship. What about the surviving humans from that ship? No one knows how they turned out. But why are they so hostile to outsiders, even going as far as killing those who trespass on the island? In 1880, British Royal Navy officer Portman led troops to forcefully land on the island. As if capturing wild animals, they kidnapped an elderly couple and 4 children. Just a few days after leaving the ship, the elderly couple, having absolutely no modern immunity, died suddenly. The British panicked, hurriedly took the 4 orphans back to the island, dropped them off on the beach, and fled. Think about it carefully. After these 4 children returned to the tribe, how would they describe the outside world to their people? Those pale monsters wearing strange clothes took away our parents and turned them into corpses. This seed of hatred on that closed-off island festered for well over a century. That is why their arrows are aimed at anyone who dares to set foot on their territory. This is not savagery. It is the memory of history. Until 1991, a miracle happened. Dr. Pandit, an Indian anthropologist, led a team near the island's shore and tossed coconuts into the sea. This was something they had been doing for years. But this time, as Pandit's boat approached, the islanders actually waded out on their own initiative and took the coconuts directly from the crew's hands. At that moment, someone stood facing the camera without drawing a bow or shouting. In human history, that was the closest peaceful contact with the Sentinelese. It was also pretty much the last. However, just a few years after this contact, the Indian government put a stop to everything. Pandit was forced to retire. There was only one reason. Scientists ran a simulation, and the results were terrifying. The Sentinelese have been isolated here for 60,000 years. Their gene pool is extremely limited. A single sneeze from you, a common flu, or even just tiny bacteria clinging to your clothes would be a biological crisis capable of wiping out their entire race. On the neighboring Andaman Islands, there was an indigenous tribe called the Bio. After the British colonizers arrived, they began getting sick and dying. The last member of the tribe passed away in loneliness in 2010. A language they had endured for tens of thousands of years, along with the entire culture and skills of a people, was completely wiped from the earth just like that. The hostility of the Sentinelese was never savagery from the very beginning, but rather a brutal yet clear-headed instinct for self-preservation. Thus, the island faded from human sight until 2004, when the Indian Ocean tsunami swept through the entire region, claiming nearly 230,000 lives. The outside world and satellites assumed that this low-lying little island had long been flattened by the waves, taking its people with it. Yet when the Indian military flew a helicopter over it, everyone on board gasped. Not a single person on the island was missing. Before the tsunami hit, They had all already evacuated to the high ground. Without satellites, warning systems, or any modern instruments, relying solely on their perception of the Earth's vibrations, they escaped this cataclysmic disaster. Before the helicopter crew could even feel relieved, a man rushed out from the trees, drew his bow, and shot an arrow toward the sky. "We are doing just fine, now leave." In November 2018, John Allen Shaw, an American missionary, paid local fishermen to secretly take him near the island. Bringing gifts and a Bible, he shouted, "Jesus loves you," as he paddled his kayak onto the beach. On the first day, an arrow flew straight at him and pierced right through the Bible in his hand. He retreated. On the second day, he went back again. On the third day, the fishermen watched from afar through binoculars and saw a terrifying scene. Several islanders had tied a rope around a man's neck and were dragging his body into the jungle. His remains are still on the island to this day. The Indian government refuses to go in and retrieve them, because anyone who goes in might also die. That is the story of this island. The last boundary on Earth that humanity cannot cross is not in Bermuda, nor is it in the Mariana Trench. It is right on the beaches of North Sentinel Island. It is like a cold mirror, reflecting the arrogance deep within the hearts of 8 billion modern people. We always assume that the path we walk is the only way forward. Perhaps in this world, there really is a choice, called never being discovered, never being saved, and never being touched by so-called civilization. And all we can do is perhaps just stand by the shore, watch from afar, and then